Okay, we're continuing the sikh of the Rebbe. The Rebbe has not yet gotten to his the main lesson we're trying to learn, but it's very interesting. The Rebbe is comparing the spies of Moses that Moses sent in to the spies that Joshua sent in. And he listed 6 differences between the two of them. And among these differences are that, first of all, Moses sent in 12 and Joshua sent in 2. Moses sent in spies that were the heads of the tribes. It says clearly what their names are. Joshua, it doesn't say what their names are, even though it says it was Pinchas and Kalev, but that's the commentary that's explained that. But it doesn't say who these. Moses sent them in an advertised way that everybody knew who they were. And also, when they went into the land of Israel, they didn't try to disguise themselves. They traveled in one big group of 12, which is not the case the ones of Joshua. Joshua sent in only 2, and he told them to keep a low profile, that they shouldn't go in any way. They should hide themselves. Chirish, it says they should go quietly. Moses sent the spies in to spy out the entire land of Israel, to go for the whole entire thing, south and west, right, to explore the whole thing. And in fact, that's what they did. By Joshua, he sent them in, and they only made it just to this one house in the wall, and that's it, they left. The purpose of Moses sent these spies in on his own. God said, do what you want to. And we have to say, says the Rebbe, that Joshua sent in the spies, and he was commanded by God, because he wouldn't have made the same mistake as Moses did to do it on his own. He sent on his own. And the Rebbe says, so the Rebbe answers all this by saying that the purpose of Joshua and the purpose of Moses, even though both of them were the same, to get the Jewish people into the land of Israel, but the purpose of the spies of Moses was to come back with a good report and inspire the Jewish people to increase their motivation to go into the land of Israel, how beautiful it is and how fertile it is. And the purpose of the spies, the scouts that Joshua sent, was to conquer the land. It was only to conquer the land, to know what the people over there are thinking, to know how are they they're motivated, and etc. The people in the land of Israel. Says the Rebbe. So this, according to this basically explains everything. Because of that, so the spies, they didn't come back to convince anybody. So there could only be 2. 2 was good enough, because they just reported privately to Joshua and the other generals, whoever there were, because this was a war thing, which is not the case. The Jews, that the 12 scouts of Moses, they came back to convince the people. So therefore, Moses sent in 1 from each tribe, the leaders of each tribe, so that they could all witness the same thing together, and they would come back and report each one to his tribe in the nuance that his tribe would be impressed by, to tell everybody how good it was and how wonderful it is. And therefore, they weren't afraid, because they knew that God was with them. They knew for sure they were going to conquer the land. Surprisingly enough, the 10 of the 12 spies of the scouts came back, and they said, we can't take over the land. It's too much trouble, too dangerous, right? Maybe in the desert, God is helping us, but He's not going to help us in the land of Israel. God himself said we're going to have to plow and we're going to have to work in the land of Israel. So he's not going to help us as much. We can't go. That's what they said. So that's why Moses sent in 12, because they had to convince their individual tribe of how good the land was. Why he sent them in, everybody knew about them, because they knew they were going to take the land over, and why they weren't afraid to go in, and they didn't make any measures to conceal themselves. They knew that the same God that was going to give them the land would give them success, would make this scouting expedition successful, etc. Okay, what's this got to do with us? We're going to see. Alpis, according to this, now we can answer a big wonder about these scouts. Explained in many places, according to Malchut and Meraglim, it says that they were all anashim. All of the 10 scouts that they sent in were all important men. Chashivut. And Rashi says at that time when Moses sent them in, they were all kosher. Rosh Alf Israel, they were the heads of the thousands of Jews. Shenivcharo Mikol Shar, they were the choice, they were chosen from all of the other Jewish people. Mina Berurim Shebehem, or Mina Sulta Shebehem, from the most refined of them and from the best of them. Sulta means the soul is the best. Shahayu b'medrega gavoa ma'od, these people that Moses sent in, the scouts, they were very, very high level, tremendously spiritual, holy tzaddikim. They were such a high level that they didn't want to come down to do the positive commandments. That's just what we just learned in Likkutei Torah, right? They didn't want to draw godliness down below. They wanted to stay in the desert. That they could sit and they could learn the Torah all the time. That the Torah was also given in the desert. But Muhammad, they were in the desert. They didn't have to deal with the world. It says they didn't have to change their clothes or even clean them. It says their clothes, and they didn't care, right? They didn't care. It made no difference to them if their clothes looked like. But they didn't. They were just interested in God and learning the Torah. Wonderful life, right? And God reacted in turn. He gave them free food. He gave them water from a rock. He protected them. They didn't have to work at the plowing and planting and harvesting. That's what they wanted. They were so holy. Even after they sinned, it says about them, it says in the beginning of, anyway, there's different places. It says they don't have a place in the world to come, and explains why. Because Medregatam Gadoli Yoter Olam Haba. They don't have a place in heaven because they're higher than heaven. Therefore, Olam Haba, this is just a reward, right? Haba, the getter shall schar, and Olam Haba, schar, going to heaven for them is not a big reward for them. They were in heaven on earth as it was. So if so, ain't no move, but it's not understood. After this greatness of the highness of these scouts, Meraglim, but Paul Mamish, I mean, they were so, they didn't realize what they were doing. They were so holy. They were so clinging to God. They wanted godliness so much. They wanted to learn the Torah. Right? It's not that they wanted to serve idols, serve the golden calf or something like that, and they were afraid. They wanted Torah. They wanted to learn the Torah in a pure, pristine way. These people were higher. It says that they were higher than heaven. They didn't even care about going to heaven. It says they have no place in heaven because it doesn't make any difference to them going to heaven. If so, after all, they didn't realize the tremendous damage that they were doing by refusing to come into the land of Israel. That God got all angry at Moses and he said, and now the Jewish people are going to wander around for 40, every one of them are going to die in the desert. And it ended up that Moses, because of that, he struck the rock. Eventually, they were there so long, and the Jewish people drove Moses crazy. He struck the rock. He didn't go to the land. They didn't realize that what they were doing is against what God wants. I mean, listen, they were holy people. It must have been that a lot of times they made decisions to go against their own will, right? They stay awake a little longer to push off your meal for a little bit, not to do what you want to in order to serve the Creator. Here, Moses was right up to now 100%. He never made a mistake. He brought them the Torah, took them out of Egypt, and now Moses is saying, okay, here we go. This is the land that God promised Abraham. Let's go in. And they said, Moses, listen, we're a little bit too holy for that. Now, what do you think? We're little children. We're holy people. We want to learn the Torah. Right? We're great holy people ourselves. Okay, we're not as holy as you, but we certainly outnumber you. Right? And in Judaism, you have to go according to the majority. We say we're not going in. They didn't realize what was wrong, that this was a bad thing to do, that Moses was telling what God wants. Yesh Lomer, we can say, Al Pia Omer, like we said before, that really something good good did come from us, that there was really a good result. What? When they said, we went to the land that you sent us. It's flowing milk and honey. And this is the fruits. They brought back these huge, massive dates and grapes. Yodu kol ben Israel, so the Jewish people knew clearly and obviously, not just in a way of faith, the greatness of the land. That's what they were sent for, and that's what they did. The idea zu ho'ila, and this knowledge of how great the land of Israel was, it must have helped upa'ala pulata, and it had its effect. La'achari meshech zaman, in the course of time. When? In the days of Joshua. In the days of Joshua, it wasn't necessary to again send spies or anyone to tell about the good of the land. Everybody knew about it. How did they know about it? From the spies that Moses sent out. That now when time of Joshua came, the Jewish people were all really motivated to go into the land of Israel. Why? Because of what the scouts that Moshe sent in saw. Because they saw the good of the land, but any busted with their physical eyes. On the other hand, according to the topic, Shebishlichutam, the tour at the Oretz, Palu and Gadol Bioter, when they went in to scout out the land, there was something that happened immediately good, not just after 40 years, but also Ba'oto Shah, also at that time. Like Rashi says, Oto Shah Kasherimuyo, like it says, when they went in, they were all holy people, they were okay. By means of the Jewish people. These were the first Jews to actually enter the land of Israel as the Jewish people. They were the first ones. Think about it. That Abraham was in the land of Israel. Isaac lived there, never left the land of Israel. Yaakov was there. God promised it to them. But this was before the Torah was given. And they didn't make a permanent dwelling in the land of Israel. After Yaakov, the Jews went into exile, right? Yaakov himself was there in Egypt. And they were in exile for 210 years. So finally, when they got out of Egypt and they were in the desert, no Jew had ever been in the land of Israel except for Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And these were the first Jews to come into the land of Israel. They were the ones who broke the ice. These were the first Jews to enter the land of Israel. These spies. And when they entered in, it says they were all holy. So if so, there was a long-term benefit that they did ingrain in the minds of the Jews that the land of Israel was a good place, even physically. And there was a short-term, immediate benefit that they entered the land of Israel. Yesh Losif, we can also add on, this whole idea of conquering and entering the land, and especially by preceding it, by sending out these scouts, Mudgash Inyan the Biru Ratachtu. It stressed the idea that the Jewish people are here in order to refine the physical world. Inyan Zeh Mudgash Biyoter Ba'aliyah B'Simcha U'B'Chefetz Gadol Katotze Meshliach HaMeraglim. This is really stressed by the fact that the Jewish people, after 40 years, they went in with great joy and, tremendous will, simcha b'chefetz, not just because of their faith, but because of what they saw. In other words, what these spies saw, this encouraged the Jewish people in the future to go into the land of Israel with great joy. And what's the idea of going into the land of Israel? Not that they were going to the land of Israel and they would have a place to live. They had a place to live in the desert. God was with them all the time, right? There was long periods of time where they camped out in one place and they stayed in one place. So the desert was there. And even if they wanted to, they could have gone back to Egypt. Egypt was decimated. They were afraid of the Jews. No, God said you have to go into the land of Israel. It's a land that got all sorts of fearsome people there, but it's a good land. And this is where you can begin to purify the whole world. And the Jews said, wow, that's what we want. Why did they say that's what we want? Because they got the report from the spies 40 years earlier that Israel is a great place. Yesh Lomar, we can say, that's what Rashi says, that they were kasherim. He said that they were kosher. Why doesn't he say at that time when Moses sent the spies in that they were tzaddikim? Why does he say that they were kasherim? What's kasherim? The word kosher is an abbreviation for kamotze shalal rav. It's in the Psalms. It says, like finding a big, spoils of war. Shalal rav. Shalal is a thing which, first of all, was by the enemy, and that opposed you, and it was taken by war. That's called shalal. Shalal means spoils of war. Sas anochi al limotecha kamotze shalal rav. It's King David's in the Psalms. What in Psalm 118? I hope 119. 119. Ubazeh gufa kamotze shalal rav. Let's look at. And this is like finding not just spoils of war. It says kamotze shal, like you find it. What does it mean? You find, you discover it. A person discovers something. What does he mean? He discovers. He looks a little bit, and then he finds. In America there was the gold rush, the diamond rush. You go and you work for a year, whatever. You dig, you suffer, you this, and suddenly you find how much money you make if you work for a year. You work for a year, you earn, let's say, $100,000, right? You work for a year. Well, the idea of finding something means that you go and you dig and you this, in order that you'll work for a year and you'll make $1 billion. That's a mitzvah. Haina, the shalal, that you find all the spoils, in other words, he goes to war and he wins the war, he has to expend energy, but the spoils that he finds are 1,000,000 times more than the energy that he put out. Ad shalal rav, until even more that he finds a lot of spoils. The riboy gadol, and a tremendous multitude, until there's a riboy, a multitude, there's nothing greater than it. Rav. Okay, so that's what it means. The spies went in, they were kosher. Kosher means what? The kamotze shalal rav. That through them they had the ability to discover a huge treasure which is totally incommensurate with any effort that any human being could make. No one could earn so much. What is this treasure? So Remez, that's what it says. Oto shakasherim, that's what it means, that at that time they were kosher. Shetochan shlichasam, the Torah, it's the whole idea of them going into the land of Israel, that this was the beginning and the start of conquering and going all of the Jews into the land of Israel, that they would go with great joy and with tremendous, chayfetz gadol, with tremendous, enthusiasm. This is the idea of working in the world in order to get this tremendous reward. That's the whole idea of working in this physical world in order to purify and refine the world, physical world, and make it into a dwelling for God. By means of this, there is a reward, kamotze shalal rav. A person, if he works in this world and he does Torah and commandments and he goes to heaven, so the reward you get into heaven, that's according to what you do in the world, right? What you do in the world, that's what you get up in heaven. A person is a big tzaddik, he gets a bigger reward. A small one, he gets a small reward. It was a bad person, he gets a punishment. According to what you do here, that's what you get. It's true, it's a godly revelation that something you never expect. When you get it, it's a surprise. You go to heaven. But on the other hand, it's measurable according to what you do. The reward that's going to be in this world is not a reward that we're going to possibly understand. It's infinitely greater. It cannot be measured. It's something that's so wonderful and so great. There's no possible way. It's like finding a treasure. right? Like you dig in the ground for a half of an hour, and all of a sudden you find the treasures of King Solomon. What's the treasure here? Revealed godliness in the world. Kad, when Eskatia Sitra Achra, there is controlled this feeling of separateness and transformed darkness into light. Sheyoyer or Ein Sof, that there will be revealed God, pure God, in this physical world. And the Sitra Achra of this whole, the Sitra Achra is the feeling of separateness in this whole entire world will be transformed. V'yoter seit v'yoter oz min hachoshech, etc. This light that comes from darkness is a different type of a light. Oh, so now we're talking. This idea that Moses sent in the spies, this is talking about what we're doing now. We're here in the world in order to make this world an incredibly timeless, infinitely wonderful place that puts heaven going to heaven. It makes it like the cartoon before the main feature. It's nothing. Nothing whatsoever. They're going to heaven. That's all for all the other religions. That's going to heaven. The essence of Judaism is to reveal the essence of God in this physical world. And that can only be done by doing what the spies didn't want to do, to get into this physical world. But the spies began. They were the ones that opened the door. True, they opened the door and they jumped back out, but they opened up the door. They were the first ones to go into the land of Israel and begin this process, this amazing process of refining the world, which will bring us kamotze shalom rab. That's why it says that the spies were kosher, like finding a tremendous treasure that can only be revealed by serving God in this physical world. Let's take a little bit of more detail. There's two ways of doing this, two ways of sending these spies, and they complement one the other. They join one the other. Shiluach Meraglim, how Moses did it, namely 12, and sending of the spies and the scouts like Joshua did it, 2. This is becoming relevant to us. What do we have to do? First of all, let's explain what it means and relevant to us, sending 12 people, each one for one different tribe. In order to call Nasi v'Nasi, that each and every head of the tribe will see his point, his part of the land that's going to be relevant to his tribe. Even though true, the land of Israel was not divided up yet, but they would go and they would see the whole land. They would say, listen, it's wonderful. I hope we get this portion. Let's explain this in a little bit of a spiritual way, which is relevant to us. The land of Israel is divided into 12 general divisions, corresponding to the 12 different tribes of Israel, that each and every tribe has its own path in serving God. Each one has its own way of serving God. For instance, the Jewish people of Yisachar and Zebulun says, Yoshve Oel, Yisachar says they sat and learned Torah, the Bali Esek, and they were masters. They were those who sat and learned the Torah, and those who were businessmen in the world. Mari Torah, Mari Abdi Tovim. There were those who learned the Torah and those who did good deeds. Both of them did both. But the main thing of Yisachar was to learn the Torah, and doing good deeds was a secondary thing. And by Zvulun, the main thing was doing good deeds and learning Torah. That was his secondary. Alder was similarly in the dividing up of all of the different tribes of the Jewish people, the 12 tribes. This is also, now it says the 10 tribes are lost, right? Since there'd be about 150 years before the first temple was destroyed, 10 of the tribes got lost. It says they'll come back. I don't know how that's going to be, but they'll all come back. Similarly, every Jew has one portion from these 12 portions of the land of Israel that tribe has to serve. When you join all these 12 different types of service of the Jewish people together, Yachad Shiftei Yisrael, like we say, Yachad Shiftei Yisrael, together, all the different tribes of Israel together, the Biru Yud Beis Chalukia Torah, the Eretz Yisrael, This then will refine all of the 12 portions of the land of Israel. Naseh, then there becomes a purification of the whole entire land. That's one of the reasons why these 10 tribes are going to have to be discovered. Kol pirtei ischalkos shebo kolim kol pirtei ischalkos sheba eretz halazu. Therefore, all the different types of Jews, when the essence of a Jew is to serve God, when they're all gathered together, then this will bring about the refinement of this physical land of Israel, will be refined, and the whole world was created for the sake of the Jewish people. What does it mean for the sake of the Jewish people? So that the Jewish people would be able to serve God and bring blessing to the world. Kaven she'eretz Yisrael koleles v'yesh bo, because the land of Israel includes and has in it all of the other lands in the world. So according to this, we can now understand the reason that each and every one of these 12 heads of the tribes went to spy out the entire land, not just his portion. They all went together. And especially what it's known that of the blessing of Yaakov, that the blessings of Yaakov, he blessed all of the sons differently, but all together. But so each one, it says, each one of the heads of the tribes also went to scout out the area that was going to be given to all the others. At first glance, since this service of each and every tribe had only his particular area of the land of Israel, so why did each one have to go to all of the others? So the answer is simply that Shapula the Kol Nasi, that each and every head of the tribe, and in this case means every single Jew, the fact that all of these 12 heads of the tribes, each one did not just scout out the area that was going to be given to his tribe. Have you ever seen a map of how the land of Israel was divided up? Maybe in the Chumash class, I'll show you. Very interesting. Dan was on the top, and Shimon was on the bottom, and Yehuda and Benjamin. That was like right around where Jerusalem is. Well, you'll see. Gam Chelke Orth the Sharash Shvatim. The reason that each one of the heads of the tribes went to all of the other areas of all the tribes is because there's a commandment that you must love your fellow man as yourself. Since that all the Jewish people are all mixed in and they're all responsible for one the other, therefore it's like that the Jewish people are like one person. So therefore all of the 12 tribes, even though each one had his own portion, and Moses could have revealed to each one, or God could have revealed to each one in Ruach HaKodesh, in prophecy, which portion was going to be given to them. So each one could have known. But nevertheless, they all went together. Why? To show that all of the Jewish people are one and the whole entire land of Israel is one, but each person has his own individual work to do. By means of unifying all of these different heads of the tribes, which was the fact that which was stressed by the fact that each one of these tribes went to scout out the whole entire land of Israel together with the other 11. This, if so, brought a refinement into the land in the highest possible way. Now, again, it's true that they came back and they did not do exactly what Moses told them to do. And there was a tremendous tragedy that came from this. But let's look at the good things that came from it. They were the first Jews to come into the land of Israel, and they came in a way of total unity. And also when they came in, they weren't afraid of anything. They weren't afraid of revealing themselves. They walked together. It would have been better if they would have split up, then they wouldn't be noticed so much. They walked together the whole time, 40 days, they were all together. Each one went to looked and scouted out an area of Israel that wasn't relevant to him at all, but it was relevant to other Jews, so they did it. This began a whole, a movement, an attitude of the Jewish people to come into the land of Israel in a happy way, in a positive way. with the no fear and in a way of love and unity, which I don't know if it ever happened since that time. But nevertheless, I mean, for sure now, it have to be a big miracle for it to happen, but we believe it's going to happen. What can we do? No, who believed we were going to get out of Egypt? Who believed? Right? Who believed that the Jewish people would withstand all of the enemies from outside and inside for 2,000 years, 4,000 years since the time of Abraham? Who would believe? Right? It's impossible. No nation would be able to stand even 10 minutes of this. Lioto mitzad va'al yedei, because of the dargas of Nalid Yisrael, Shamayla mischalkos, because what unified them? An aspect of the Jewish people, the godliness of the Jews, which is above any of these 12 tribes, the 12 divisions, a level which is above any sort of division, like it's drawn down into the world. So that's what they did. They succeeded in drawing unity in the world. Unity, nothing more difficult than to unify the Jews. Every Jew has a different opinion. Every Jew has a different idea. That's why they say it's so incredibly ridiculous, this idea that the Jews have this plan to take over the world. You can't get two Jews to agree on anything. Even one Jew doesn't get along with himself. That's the way it, but nevertheless, there is one unified, and God, that's the way God wants it. He wants there to be all of these differences from one end to the other, because then when there's unity, it's like an orchestra. If it would be all clarinets, it would be terrible. After 10 minutes, like you go to spot for the klezmer thing, 1 million clarinets, it drives you crazy. After 5 minutes, you can't take it anymore. So everything is different. Every Jew is different, right? And when there's harmony between them, ooh, this is an amazing thing. That's called making unity from many. E pluribus unum, from many, there comes one. This is the secret of fixing up the entire world, the secret of the Jewish people. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. And now let's do the Yom Yom. Wait, we didn't do the Yom Yom. Yom. No. Wrong one. There's also Hayom Yom with Mashiach, which I think, okay. The Alter Rebbe explains that the three that Chachma Bin and Dat, the faculties of intellect, Chachma Bin and Dat, and the 7 aspects of emotions, right, in chapter 3, that every Jew, every human being really, in fact, in the matter is everything in the world, has 10 aspects of God. It reflects 10 aspects of God, but they all come from the superior aspect, the supernal aspects of God. This refers to Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, the 3 aspects of the soul, which are in the body of man. But every Jew has this unique thing called self-sacrifice, Mesirut Nefesh. The readiness to sacrifice yourself, to sacrifice your will, to sacrifice your life for the Creator. Because a Jew cannot be separate from God. This does not come from any one of the 10 spheres. This comes from the essence of God himself. And this transcends all opposites. This is what we learned about just now, that the 12 tribes, the 12 spies went in and they were all unified. This is an aspect of godliness, which is the essence of Judaism, self-sacrifice. This is higher than even the level of Chachma, we said, which is the highest of the Sfirot. Have a good day with Mashiach now. See you at 3 o'clock for the Chumash class. What did I do here? Yeah, it's good. Have a good day to you also. Thanks. Shalom.